Gambling, as we know it, it is everywhere. With the rise of online casinos and bookmakers, no one is left untouched by the wrath of gambling companies looking to extract every dollar they can from their customers. Gambling isn't a new concept, but online bookmaking is. For most of us, that has come to fruition within our lifetimes. Whether or not you disagree with it, the truth is that it's becoming integrated into everyday life for a large number of us. So, how did we get to this point? Where did it all come from? To answer that, you have to go back to the Middle Ages, around 1200 AD. At the time, gambling had already existed, but betting on horse races was still a private affair. Wealthy patrons organised bets among themselves, behind closed doors, usually on trust. If you wanted to place a wager, you needed someone willing to take the other side. That system worked, but only in small circles. As horse racing grew in popularity over the following centuries, so did the amount of money involved, and without having to negotiate every wager individually. By the late 18th century, that friction became a problem, as the current arrangements could not satisfy. That is when things changed. In 1795, a man by the name of Harry Ogden appeared at Newmarket and had a slightly different approach. Ogden stood at Newmarket, close to the action, positioning himself beside converging foot traffic. He listens, he overhears owners, trainers, and serious bettors discussing the upcoming races. Who's fancied, who's drifting, where the money might go. Instead of betting with them, he does something different. He names a price. Anyone can bet. One side, fixed odds, no searching for a counterparty. In doing so, Ogden sharply shifts betting away from peer-to-peer gambling into something new entirely, a standing market. He isn't gambling on horses, he's laying out risk, earning through margin and volume. That moment marks the transition from informal wagering to bookmaking as a structured business. Ogden was the forefather of modern bookmaking. He was able to set public odds not just for one person, but the same price for everyone. Those odds moved as money came in, and when too much cash landed on one outcome, the price was shortened. When interest was low, the price was lengthened to pull money in. The odds weren't predictions, they were tools used to manage risk. Harry Ogden's model spread quickly across the UK. As money flowed, so did attention. Betting finally reached the middle class, and it was ripe for an explosion. That vacuum didn't stay empty for long. Where betting was illegal, organised groups stepped in to run it. Not out of passion for the sport, but because it was profitable, repeatable, and hard to police. Criminal gangs took control of large parts of underground bookmaking. They ran networks of runners and collectors moving cash daily. Debts were enforced privately. The system worked because it offered what legal betting couldn't. It was local, it was constant, and it was convenient. People didn't need to travel to a racecourse. They didn't need permission, they didn't need to wait. Betting had become routine, something done in pubs, workplaces, and neighbourhoods. By the late 19th and early 20th century, underground bookmaking wasn't a fringe activity. It was organised, widespread, and deeply embedded in everyday life. At that point, the problem for the government wasn't crime, it was scale. Suppressing betting no longer reduces harm. It just simply handed control to people operating entirely out of the system. That's when the approach began to change. Overnight, off-track betting was legal. Bookmaking took its closest form to what we recognise today. It became legal not because the attitude softened, but because enforcement had failed miserably. By the late 1950s, betting was already everywhere. Bans hadn't reduced it, they just handed control to illegal operators. The governments weren't stopping gambling, they were just losing visibility over it. Legalising betting shops was a trade-off. By allowing shops, the state could pull betting out of the pubs and backrooms, cut organised crime out of the mass market, regulate who could operate, monitor cash flow, and collect tax. It wasn't to encourage betting, but it was to regain control of something that had already spun out of control. Once shops were legal, the structure tightened. Odds were posted on the wall, bets were written down, money went through fixed locations. What had been hidden became visible. Licenses weren't handed out freely. Anyone with a serious criminal record was blocked. That was the point. Illegal bookmakers didn't disappear, they just lost scale. The volume moved. What had been happening in pubs and backrooms moved into shops instead. Tracked, counted, taxed. The government didn't stop gambling, it just decided who was going to run it. The jump to online bookmaking as we know it today didn't come from phones or apps. It started much simpler. Bookmakers had already been taking bets by phone for decades. The system worked. The problem was scale. Every bet still needed a person on the other end of the line. Someone to answer, someone to confirm the price, someone to write it down. The internet removed that bottleneck. For the first time, bets could be placed without speaking to anyone. And one of the first operators to do this was Intertops. They didn't invent a new model, they took an existing one and automated. Odds were posted online, bets were entered directly, accounts replaced cash. The bookmaker still set the price, still managed risk essentially, still relied on margin and volume. The difference was throughput, no staff limits, no opening hours, no friction. The system could now run continuously. Modern bookmaking didn't change what betting is. It changed how often you could do it, how easily you could do it, and how little effort it takes. Once betting moved online, the physical limits disappeared. There was no shop to travel to, no opening hours, no cashier, no delay. You didn't need to plan a bet. You could place one the moment the thought appeared. That's why it works. A modern bookmaker isn't built around sport, it's built around repetition. Games run across every time zone. When one finishes, another starts. When sport stops, casino games fill the gap. There's always something live, something open, something to take your money. The phone become the shop, the app become the counter, and the friction that once slowed betting down is gone. What used to be a local business now operates globally by default. A company licensed in one country can take bets from millions of people. Everything that once limited betting, distance, time, social visibility has been removed. That is the real shift. Bookmaking didn't spread because people suddenly love gambling more. It spread because the system was engineered to fit into everyday life. The model doesn't rely on big wins or big losses. It relies on being there constantly. Harry Ogden stood next to a racetrack. Modern bookmakers sit in your pocket. It is the same idea, but at a different scale.